Sadly, it seems like he will never make an appearance ever again. I had high hopes for him in the final season of Camp Cretaceous, but it just wasn't meant to be, I guess. Asset 87 alone would have broken Netflix servers if he was in there, but yet another year without him has gone by. But it's still nice to reminisce, knowing that no matter what they do plot-wise, he will always remain the most out-of-pocket Rex killer in the entire franchise. A Rex slayer with no equal on Sarna. Yeah, that's right, there is no T-Rex that can cross this guy when it comes to durability or just pure crash out energy. But that's in his verse. All the verses may be different. One where the Rexes are the size of a small sauropod and the Raptors can take building level explosions to the face. It's been over a month since I've done one of these, and you guys in Discord, go John by the way, actually wondered what happened. Honestly, I don't know. Was trying out new videos and so on. But don't worry folks, December is the month of what if scenarios involving different dinosaurs from variant verses, and this time, I think you know what's gonna happen. As requested by a good amount of you, I will be dropping the most unhinged megaceropod of the Jurassic franchise into the Primitive War universe. It's a good thing he's bulletproof or bullet resistant, because there's gonna be a lot of flying in this verse, and his durability will definitely be an asset. But is that enough for the crashers that now live in Vietnam? Jurassic Park may have bio-engineered monsters, but nature and the Primitive War verse also made their own wide-range animals. Luckily for the Spinosaurus, he's one of the more powerful ones in this verse, and people working on the models for the movie said that over time, if he wanted to and left his own devices, he could cause an extinction event on Sarna. But just before our geeked out Spinosaurus is transferred again, if you're into this sort of content, consider hitting that sub button. At this point, I don't even know what type of dinosaur content I do. Like most creators stick to one particular spot, but I just do anything. So if you like anything from prehistory that could roar, I guess, you should like it here. But that's enough self-glaze for the year, let's get on with the video. I've done way too many videos going in depth with all the stats of Asset 87. If you want, you could check out some of these videos for a full deep lore stat sheet. For this video, I'm just going to be addressing his most notable and valuable strengths and weaknesses. In terms of size, I'll be using his Camp Cretaceous version, so over 50 feet and 10 tons. This size doesn't slow him down or prevent him from reaching places though. To this day, he's the only creature in the entire trilogy that went so far as to track people over an entire section of the island just because he hates us, which is somewhat valid when you take into account what humans have done to him in his entire life. He's just slower than a really fit person. The cast in Jurassic Park 3 aren't the fittest, they just have plot armor, so you don't count. And when it comes to strength, boys, there are a lot. Wherever this guy meets a T-Rex, he just gains a strength buff. He held down an adult Rex, like in place, and snapped its neck, and in Camp Cretaceous when his jaws are noticeably wider, he somehow fractured the T-Rex's neck with just his bite force. He's the only one to do this by the way so far, even though he's supposed to technically have the weakest bite force out of all the megaceropods. Like you could hear the crunch as Big E.T. slumped to the floor. He can tear a plane to shreds with no effort, burst through canyon walls, and a big one for me, hold open an industrial sliding door with just one hand, even though he did eventually have to let it go, because being able to push back multiple tons of force with just one hand is terrifying work. But there's something even more terrifying than his strength, and that is his durability. Based on feats, this man easily takes the crown for durability. Some could argue that Rexy takes first, and even though she's really durable, how much of that is the film just trying to keep her alive for the plot? Anyway, the guy is resistant to bullets to an extent, receiving a few shots from the mercenaries, got hit by a plane and barely reacted, and then there's his weird immunity against T-Rex bites to an extent again. Remember the entire fight scene with him and Bull? That Rex got the best hold possible to cause the most damage, and yet, at most, Asset 87 showed some bruising with a few blood patches here and there. And while his attacks caused Big E.T. to just lay there, he easily was able to get on out of there since he just regained consciousness after he saw angry female Rex running at him. The guy got jumped by raptors too, and got hit so hard by Kentrosaurus to the face and he flipped over. The fact that he got up wasn't the most shocking to me. It's the fact that none of the Sagamizers pierced his hide on impact. I also forgot to mention, but his most delicate spot can take a good amount of damage as well, because when he rolled over onto his tail, the thing took like 10 tons of weight like a champ and didn't bend in the slightest. His intelligence is fairly decent, not quite at the level of most hybrids, but about the same as the other megaceropods. However, his battle intelligence is unmatched, and this ain't a debate. The guy got released as a juvenile onto an island with baryonyx, ceratosaurus, raptors, rexes and more, managed to survive to adulthood, and became the apex there, and then was forced to fight other dinosaurs from another island. And you can tell he uses this experience to his advantage. It's like the Indominus but a bit faster because of his knowledge. He isolates weak points during fights and exploits them, or just before and during the fight, he isolates what position would give him the best odds of coming out on top, even using the surrounding environments as a tool to aid in his wins. But with that said, one of his downfalls is his blatant aggression. It isn't really his fault because of all the crap he went through and torture from different companies. He had to endure it on Sarna and then on Manticore's island. How do you think they made the Spinosaurus? Bro got tests on him left and right, but his brashness often ends up with him not thinking directly when beginning the fight sometimes. Like, it's usually midway when he's in trouble does it become more strategic, and with his height, it is only natural that he'd have a less center of gravity than the other megaceropods, because he has a knack of being brought to his hands when something just shoves him. Also, a bull rex ramming you would make you go to the floor as well. But ramming won't be the biggest issue 87 is gonna have to worry about, as the bull rex in the other verse is something he would never imagine. The environment during the Vietnam War and Primitive War is basically the same as Sorna, subtropical with different biomes, from dense forests all the way to open plains, so there won't be any issue climate wise. When it comes to prey, there's a variety of things to choose from. Many different species of hadrosaurs, ceratopsians, and even sauropods for him to choose. The Triceratops in Primitive War can fight, but seeing that this versus Spinosaurus can bring one down and is built for a more semi-aquatic lifestyle than 87 himself, I'd say Sorna and Spinosaurus should do just fine in a 1v1. And even though they somewhat band together sometimes, I'm sure a 10-ton menace charging in their direction would cause a stampede. The Hadrosaurus also won't really be an issue for the bio-engineered menace, but the sauropods may be different. The Amargasaurus are big, but if the Spinosaurus is determined enough, he should be able to bring one down. Since it was stated that he could technically cause an extinction event on Sorna over time, that would mean that he theoretically can bring down a Brachiosaurus, who will live on Sorna, so you know they can fight back, and they are bigger than the Amargasaurs. But the Dreadnoughtus is a hit or miss. These guys are giants and I'm sure they can defend themselves quite well against 87, but he would really have to be desperate to risk a takedown, and besides, he's likely never going to be that desperate, seeing how many more easier options there are for food. But it isn't all sunshine and rainbows. He is in the middle of a literal war. There's Russian, Vietnamese, and American soldier camps littering the country's jungle. When I did this with Neodominus, I said that she's smart enough to not tackle an entire army head on because she knows the consequences, but she had experience with that, and 87's blind hatred for us would lead him to straight up charging into the camp. American outposts seem to be the most common, and if he barges into a large one, well, it's going to be interesting. He has amazing durability, don't get me wrong, and he will kill a good amount of them, but over time, the constant barrage of dozens of firearms will start to have an effect. Not to mention they have armor-piercing artillery and explosives they can just throw at him. Something like this would kill even him. If that part of him retreating in Camp Cretaceous did not exist, I'd say this is where he dies, but seeing that he knows when to back down sometimes, he likely will get away into the surrounding area after taking too much damage. And almost none of these soldiers has ever seen a dinosaur, so they sure as hell won't be running after him. At most, there will be tighter security around the borders, and larger groups will be sent out when traveling. His hatred for our kind would likely mean he's gonna linger on the outskirts for a while until he is eventually forced to go away, and while on his travels, he's gonna realize humans are the greatest threat. Vietnam at the time had native large predators like tigers, but those wouldn't even look at 87. Venomous snakes and crocodiles also pose no threat, but there are others in his family tree that do kill crocodiles. Primitive war mammoths, of course, like all the other dinosaurs, can withstand man-made weapons for a good amount of time, but the size gap is just way too great for this to be an issue. But the native Spinosaurus are a different thing. These guys are big, about the same size as the Sorna Spino, but they haven't really shown a lot of feats compared to our Spino. Yeah, they can kill Triceratops, but that's not much compared to InGens. In a straight 1v1, I'd say 87 would win more than likely, and not that difficult, due to him being more adapted for a hardcore battle, and he could swim pretty good himself, since he was the one that caught up to the speedboat at the start of the movie. Sometimes more than one Primitive War Spino will be in the same area, but it's not known if they will back each other up like some of the other carnivores shown later, or will they just let it be. Either way, our Spinosaurus would likely establish himself as a dominant figure along the main stretches of river, but he is a wanderer after all and would encounter some of the more intense carnivores in the verse. The Deinonychus and Quetzalcoatlus are dangerous, but won't pose much of an issue to him again. The Deinonychus, even with their numbers, already scatter with another raptor species, and the Asdarchids won't just pick a fight with some large theropod. Now this is where Acid 87's free trial ends, as the worst of the worst will now show up. The two theropods I'm going to mention take durability and power to levels that should not be possible. We'll start off with the biggest group of menaces in the verse, being the Utahraptors. Grizzly-sized bastards that hold a grudge and are hyper-intelligent. The main one, called Cyclops, called up his gang to kill one specific guy at night after he got stabbed in the eye. Mind you, he started it by ripping open his stomach. The terrifying part is that it was with surgical precision. He put his hand over the soldier's mouth to muffle out his voice so no one else could hear him. They have an almost Jurassic Park level intelligence, but are much more powerful. Why are these guys getting shot in the face and head with assault rifles and just shaking it off? Not to mention Cyclops was like 6 feet away from a building level explosion when it went off and came back at the end with no signs of damage from the blast. This isn't like the aftershock with the Indominus, the straight up blast. Only way I've seen him die with guns is getting an organ shot or releasing an unreasonable amount of bullets into a single one. Ordinarily I would say that they would give 87 a wide berth, but if for some reason the Spinosaurus decides to attack a decently sized group, then all hell could break loose. In a cutscene from Jurassic Park, Acid 87 was killed by dozens of raptors when they attacked him from all over the region. He killed a good amount of them, but eventually even he succumbed to the attack. But those velociraptors were at max 300 pounds, while primitive warriors are the bare minimum 1000 pounds, while some can get up to a ton. The size isn't the only issue, but their attack potency as well. I was gonna do durability, but a hard claw swipe or a bite could cause slashing and piercing damage, seeing the power 87 is packing. But these Utahraptors pack heat themselves, and instead of more than 30, I'd say like 8 or more could kill him. They seem to travel in small groups, but given that they number in the thousands as well overall, yeah, they won't be in the thousands all the time obviously, like the end scene, but if for some reason he decides to pick on a party of 10 or something for whatever reason, and they decide to retaliate, the Utahraptors will suffer losses, but the Spinosaurus will suffer the greatest one. But as I said, more often than not, they'd give him some space, and he himself doesn't go out of his way to face targets like raptors the same way he does with humans and other large megaceropods. The raptors have to have a nest nearby to protect, or 87 being unnecessarily aggressive for a fight to break out, in which our Spino would lose if it's 8 or more. So again, he makes it out alive given the odds. The odds immediately drop down now though when the king of the verse pulls up. Acid 87 may be accustomed to kicking Jurassic Park Rex's butt, but those have nothing to the primitive war T-Rexes. In this area there's a pair that fiercely defend their chicks, buck and doe on crack basically, and guess what? As stated by the novel itself, the male Rex is 15 tons, however the movie counterpart is likely around 13 if I had to play it safe. Still, that's 3 tons of muscle more than our Spinosaurus. He is the main defender of the area. The female usually stays with the chicks while he patrols the territory, which will mean he's gonna see 87 first more than likely, and when it comes to durability, 87 he just met his match. These two took on a large Russian camp by themselves because one of their kids died. They don't even react when bullets shoot them, nothing does damage. The male took a tank round to the body, however some people say it was an armor piercing round from some other massive gun. Regardless, the fact that he showed no signs of injury in the end speaks volume. They destroyed tanks, armored vehicles, infrastructure, etc, etc. And what I like the most is that their bite force is stronger than the Jurassic Park T-Rexes. When they bite people, they either split in two or pop like a balloon, something like Fang in Primal. So I'm sorry to say it, but if 87 picks a fight with the male, he's likely gonna lose. Aside from the weight advantage, the male is just very powerful, and 87 likely won't be able to hold him in place like with Bull, or just any other T-Rex in Jurassic Park. So a neck snap is out of the window, and Primitive War's male Rex is shorter, so he has a lower center of gravity, and is unlikely to be tipped over. And remember how I said Bull made Acid 87 go down to the floor during the fight? Well, a Rex that is this big will put this man on his back if he rams into him. And in terms of bite force, this thing does have the newtons to damage 87, unlike most of the Jurassic Park T-Rexes. I'm not saying the Spinosaurus would just get one shot because he is going to do some damage to the male Rex as well, but in a full out deathmatch, I have my money in Primitive War's T-Rex most of the time, if not always. And if this movie's version is 15 tons, then it's looking even worse. Not only are these Rexes more resistant to gunfire that would make even 87 retreat, they pack the power to kill him as well. The female is an in-between. He might have a chance with her, or better odds at least. So more than likely our Spinosaurus is gonna die here, because he's gonna think it's another random Rex, and his massive Rex will risk death itself so that his kids will live. So yeah, only way I see 87 surviving this is if he somehow manages to escape like he did in Camp Cretaceous. But could he survive in Primitive War overall? I'd say there's like a 50% chance, possibly a bit lower. The issue is that if he sees a large military camp of any side and attacks it due to his hatred for us, he could be killed before he can retreat, and I'm almost certain that he will interact with the male Rex, at which there's almost no chance of him winning or even escaping. Then as I said, there's a slight chance of him pissing off a medium-sized Utahraptor group and getting packed up for it. If he does escape and manages to stay away from the main camps and also avoid the Rexes, then I'd say he'd do fine, because he's likely going to stay clear of the larger river systems with the Primitive War Spinosaurus. He'd quickly establish himself as the dominant figure there, and many large herbivores come here to drink, so he's gonna do fine. Well, if he doesn't get killed. Just gotta manage to escape the male Rex somehow during the first encounter and stay away from a large army outpost. But let me know what you guys think. How well will he do in the verse, and what video should I do next? That's all for now folks, I'll see you tomorrow.